if I may, 5 very, very quick areas which I'll just try and expand upon briefly. One is just how serious this game is that we're in and how high the stakes are. Number 2, about the fact that we need as much ammunition as we possibly can through insight because as a result of that game that we're in. Number 3, we need to know ourselves better than ever before, John's point, but not a point of so much introspection that we miss the global comparative position. 4th, perhaps I'll spend a little bit more time on this, Simon Collins, is around what I believe the characteristics are for that insight and modelling going forward, not least around the West Midlands. And then 5thly, think about putting a whip everyone up into a frenzy into the discussion around, so what does this mean? Are we at a crossroads of opportunity or not? So, in terms of the first point, a serious game win, this clearly is serious. The devolution genie, and I keep saying this in various platforms, is out of the bottle, it's not going back in. We can all have different views about where we are on austerity, where we are on post-Scotland. It is the game in town and it is very serious. And the other point about saying along these lines that tectonic plates are shifting across public policy, across the economics and fiscal situation that we find ourselves in, the way in which central and local is attempting to work differently across England and indeed the UK, is a frenzied, febrile environment. So, without going into detail on that, literally by the hour, devolution deals are being, if not done, moving towards being partially done. Now that is completely countercultural to a number of the things I think John and Jeff were both sharing with us. Hold on, let's get what we know works and also be honest about the gap of what we don't know yet and the analysis and insight before we start heading into interventions and application which we don't yet know whether they will lift the very thing that we all aspire to lift. Now intuitively we think we know, but evidentially we don't. So how do we marry up in this really big game and where the stakes are very high and the risks are incredibly high, as well as the benefits, that short-term race, because that's exactly the language for devolution and indeed the construction of new governance apparatus, not least the combined authorities and metro mayors, with the fact that we need to build this empirical evidential base. Now I can't answer all of that because whether we like it or not, that febrile, frenzied environment that we work in will not become calm. It will not become kind of frozen in ice. It will continue to be like that. And I think that's a really big challenge for academics, and I'm going to return to this at the end, policymakers and practitioners. So that's number 1, about the serious game and this kind of almost dissonance between the pace and the need just to reflect and be careful what we wish for our region. The second bit, which plays into my absolute passion to support not just City-REDI, but the desire for us to build an alliance across the wider West Midlands on this journey, is that for all of us, I just happen to be the chief executive of one of the big authorities within the discussions, politicians, stakeholders need to have as much ammunition and insight as we possibly can. Why? Because I think you'd all agree, whether we've been suboptimal in the past across the region, and clearly we have, people are making decisions now in the environment I've just mentioned, which are game-changing for them. It will mean actually, to them, a ceding of control and power in some ways, despite the devolution notion of getting stuff from Westminster. It is absolutely personally threatening as well as opportunistic. And I think from the human side, we've got to get into that psyche to understand that in order to support decision makers, policy makers, we need to give them all the ammunition they possibly can. And this is why this debate today, and you being here, I think is absolutely essential. Because if we don't give ourselves that kind of ammunition and that kind of insight in the way I think we're starting to describe, which is not introspective but thinks comparatively globally as well, then what are we doing? We're actually moving towards a set of high-cost interventions which at best are part-educated guesses, at worst are complete whims. And I said this morning at the breakfast, and I mean this, and everyone agrees with this. If you're not careful, you move as a region through this devolution debate towards a set of quite macho, kind of testosterone-fueled decisions on big projects, big toys, big infrastructure, big superstructure. Absolutely understand the requirement for that to enable our regions to move forward. Let's make sure the connectivity of those to each other and for our region are the right interventions. So I think we just need to peel this away, and that's where I think City-REDI and our ability to build that embedded capacity is absolutely essential. And I think finally on the second item, just something about, and this is where politicians, policymakers and certainly chief execs just need to be a bit careful. You've got to get behind the broad strokes, and we're all guilty of this, and kind of sound bites. So what's happened in the 6.5 years I've been in the West Midlands, including in Coventry, is very broad assertions about the complete paucity of certain supply for certain skills requirements, and the fact that business say to us, haven't got the right skills for not just the challenges we face now in 10 years' time. That's just easy. That's, with the greatest respect, that's kind of Daily Mail headline stuff. What we need is the granularity. What do we really mean by that? What are the real changes that are happening? What are the real shifts between demand, supply and skills? What do we really mean by the fact that we're not connected enough through our transport system? Broad brush, fine. You need a narrative which inside it is a granularity which does take time to build, which is my kind of second point. The third point I've kind of alluded to, which is a bit more on it. I think somehow we've got to find a way of knowing ourselves better than ever before. Because we are different, we are unique. We've got a set of assets that are partially understood across the metropolitan areas, the county district areas, but not well enough. So we've got to do that. But, and this is a really huge, significant but for me, we've got to find a way of doing that without being so introspective and so much looking at our own navels that we forget that this whole game is being played out in a global world, whereby the very reason that I've always believed agglomeration and scale is where we should be at, is the very reason why we're having these discussions. Therefore, don't copy in a frenzied way, because that's lazy, but also remember that whilst we're introspectively trying to deal with our own knowledge base, cities, regions across the world are moving on at a rate that is absolutely phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. If you're not careful, we invent what we think is the next decade for us, and it's already been lost elsewhere. So I think there's something about the balance between those two things. I think that's a tough call, but one that we can certainly manage. Fourthly then, about what the characteristics are for me, I'll just share them with you, and we can probably get into a discussion around it. So the characteristics of what this insight, evidence base could and should look like to lock in maybe some of these solutions going forward. And much has been covered actually from both the profs, but let me give my take. If we're going to build this modelling, this embedded capacity through City-REDI and move towards, I think, a really right aspiration to be a global institute with connectivity to other global institutes across the world. If we're going to do that, it clearly needs to be multi and interdisciplinary. I could spend an hour now telling you that despite 16 years in public services and local government, and I was an academic before that, in my last decade and a half, I have not seen, really, if I'm honest, an erosion of the very silos that John talked about. In fact, as we've seen austerity pressures, you've almost seen protectionism of those very professional organisational silos. What's all that about? When clearly the interconnected, integrated nature of how places work and how people choose to live their lives and how economies work are very much the opposite to silos, and they work on a vertical and horizontal basis all at the same time. That's madness. So there's something about our organisations and this work going forward which embody the very problem of the disciplines that are working in silos, and that's a hard ask for vice-chancellors of universities, for business, for local government, for LEPs. Actually, the organisations often the very problem. And that leads to the idea of being much more matrix. You know, where are we going to generally find out where this skill, the capacity is embedded across our patch? Because I think once we start to look, we will be surprised, actually, and pleasantly surprised, just by how much talent we've got across our patch, who quite frankly has been hidden for far too long and playing on the periphery of all of this. The third characteristic, and I don't know how we're going to do this, there's people a lot brighter than myself who can work this one out. How can we build this modelling, this insight over time, to give it the necessary academic rigour, but at the same time be able to understand that we are in necessarily a time-bound world, whereby people are wanting an answer to the question, what works? Because whilst we're trying to have interventions from different funding mechanisms, we need to be sure that we're not chasing follies. So how do we have this kind of notion of building longitudinally a model that knocks spots off everything else in the world, with the exception of Chicago, at the same time as being real and iterative, that Insight meets almost, if not on a daily basis, on a short-term basis, understands policy, recalibrated to practice, and then gets that cycle back running. Because let me tell you, that's why I got out of academia. And this was a decade and a half ago. I know it's all moved on. I completely lost the point of application in real time to be able to have these false conversations about the fact the world works in a certain way. If you could unleash the power of academic insight locked into policy and practice on a short-term basis, let certain people sit in, dust-filled rooms in towers and let them do stuff which is fundamentally great but doesn't change the world. And I lost my faith a bit in academia, and I'm here today thinking actually maybe we found our mojo again, and I think that's fantastic. We've got to work out that rigour of modelling over time, otherwise we lose our credibility and authenticity with the fact that this is about impact every single day. That's how our urban environments are working, this is how our economies are working. And this next bit, it's a shame the Bishop's gone, but I've spoken to him before and I know you want me to echo this. It comes a little bit about the race. What are we really trying to achieve though through a kind of economic growth and prosperity that we understand better, a kind of sense of being able to create those conditions for business to thrive? Well, ultimately this is about people. And this is about unlocking the potential for our people that, quite frankly, across the West Midlands, in many, not small pockets, big pockets, have completely missed the upturns that have happened over economic cycles in the past. And I'm telling you now, that is a travesty. That's our collective guilty knowledge. Quite frankly, and it's an indictment on policy and practice that we've seen people inequality, not just health but their outcomes, not actually change a jot over 2 decades, despite multi-billions of pounds worth of public sector intervention. That's an experiment that has failed. So therefore we've got an opportunity not just to grow for the sake of growth, but this good growth notion has to be to unlock, in my view, the power and the potential of people, whether they're lucky enough to live in some more affluent bits of our urban environments, or indeed in the areas that clearly are struggling in terms of outcomes and opportunities and access to what they need to live fulfilled lives. And I think this is being, if we're not careful, shoehorned out. So how can we ensure that through this, again, this pace and race for the provider side, the supplying of conditions to create the economic prosperity, that we have livability, but above all, we genuinely have social justice, and I believe that. I believe there is a way in which we can, for the first time, properly unlock the potential in our communities, unlock the prosperity that we can achieve to more people than have actually been able to enjoy that in the past. And I'll leave that with you, let's discuss it, but I think that's a really important characteristic of how we build this insight over time, which kind of links to the point of, and I was kind of constructively critical when I first got engaged in the City-REDI idea, and I think we've now almost covered it really in terms of the public sector reform piece. The whole devolution debate and the entire structural change towards combined authorities, remember, yes, it is about economic growth, but it's also about public sector reform. And how can we truly understand the gap between that which is coming in and that which is going out in our places? And it's not just about money, it's not just about charts, it's about people's lives again. So somehow, someway, this modelling has got to characterise over time, not just the econometrics and the best modelling that is known to man and woman, but it's got to also understand how we can not just reform the supply side of public services, but how we can change the relationship and the narrative between the state and the people that live in our places. Because that psychological contract needs to be changed, it needs to be transformed. It is no longer a passive recipient mode of services, it is now about people co-producing services with us, and we're not delivering them at them, we're delivering them with them. And that's a new characteristic of, in my view, new lives, new economies and new places. There's loads of others that I want to put into the characteristics, but there's some. So that leads me to my 5th point. I'll shut up and we'll get into a discussion. And I wouldn't say this if I didn't believe it, I genuinely believe, as a result of the devolution genie out of the bottle, as a result of, if I'm really candid and honest, the West Midlands as a result of that, waking up for the first time in a long time, and political leadership showing an incredible maturity, a collaboration of what in the past would have been conceived of the unwilling, coming together because they realise that the prize of the game, although the stakes are high, is significant, and arguably not to be given that opportunity in probably another generation or more. So everything is coming together socially, politically, economically, to be able to provide for the West Midlands, in my view, an opportunity to do something very special, which actually, as much as we do know about our asset base, we should have been delivering, by the way, a long, long time ago. And the output gap should not be where it is. Full stop. Something has dragged us down, and that's just not good enough. So I think in that space, can we conceive of City-REDI, the insight, the evidence base that I know we're all searching for, to embody the kind of future? Is this what we've been looking for, to once and for all bind in the HE sector across the wider patch, academics within those institutes, with policymakers at all spatial levels, internationally, nationally, regionally and locally, but above all with practitioners at business level, at operational level, on our patches every single day. Now you'll sit there and make your own minds up about whether this is that perfect opportunity. I genuinely think it is. And I think we should be bold enough to think big about this agenda and maybe answer some of the questions that have been answered to me 15 years ago. I wouldn't have left academia. And some would say that would have been academia's loss and local government's gain. It probably was that way around, yeah. But it's true, and I think I'll leave you with the fact that there is something about impact, there is something about once and for all melding around this agenda the power that sits in this room, genuinely, with the power that sits outside, to actually come up with a set of solutions to whether they're chewy and crunchy or truly wicked issues, because I'll tell you what, they're not going to be sophisticated solutions. They're going to be ones that require attrition, they're going to require strong leadership. And that's a space I think we should be in. And we've got an opportunity to grasp that, or leave it to another area, or quite frankly another time. I think that'd be really sad. Thanks very much.